Hello everybody, Carl Larson here with another workflow enhancing tutorial for you. Today I'll be showing you a quick but effective method for removing chromatic aberration from your footage. But first, what is chromatic aberration? And why do I want to get rid of it? Well, let me show you. When light goes through a camera lens, it gets bent through a series of lens elements to get focused on the imaging plane of your recording device. Film, digital, stills, video, the same principle applies no matter what you're shooting. And here's the problem. Visible light is made of a spectrum of colors. And when all these colors go through the material of your lens, they all have a unique index of refraction, which means all the colors of the light get bent at slightly different angles as they reach the imaging plane of your camera. And as a result, even if your picture is perfectly focused, you can still get some weird haloing and fringes as a natural consequence of this optical phenomenon. And depending on the quality and settings of your lens, you'll see this to a greater or lesser extent in your footage. So how do we get rid of it? Let's take our footage, drop it on the Make New Comp button, pan over a bit so we can see what we're doing, and go to Effect, Color Correction, Change to Color. The next thing we'll want to do is select the color we want to eliminate. In our case, it's this ugly pink fringe around the moon. Navigate into a frame where the fringing is especially prominent, click on the eyedropper in the From parameter to select the color. Since we're trying to eliminate a range of colors, from dark pink to light pink, let's choose a color that's in the middle of our range. We can dial in how much we want to deviate from this color using the tolerance controls below. Next, change the Change parameter to Hue and Saturation. In effect, what we're doing is keying out one color and replacing it with another. To do this, the plugin is defining a mask, or a matte, to tell us which pixels to affect and which it can leave alone. We can view the matte by clicking on the View Correction Matte checkbox, and we can modify it with the tolerance controls. So let's play with our tolerance controls to see what we can do to clean up this selection. Hue lets us define how much tolerance we set in our matte for the surrounding hues, like red and orange. The higher the percentage, the broader the range of colors will be allowed to be changed in our selection. The lower the percentage, the narrower the range of colors will allow to be changed in our selection. Similarly, lightness and saturation let us define how much tolerance we set in our matte for the surrounding lightness and saturation values respectively. The softness control determines the severity of the gradient from the affected to unaffected pixels in our final output. As a general principle, we want to be affecting as few pixels as possible, so let's keep that in mind as we play with our values. One method I found particularly helpful is to toggle the correction matte on and off as I dial in my initial values. From there, I can make my final decisions looking at the before and after values by turning the effect on and off. In the end, let your eye be the judge of which values are appropriate on a shot-by-shot basis. Finally, let's change our 2 color to something that's not perfectly white. Let's change that to 80% and click OK. That looks great, but this is a fairly simple shot. It hardly had any color in it, minus that ugly pink fringe that we just got rid of. So let's look at a couple more clips to see how this works on other footage that may not be quite as forgiving. Here's a shot with a bunch of motion, color, and subtler chromatic aberration. Let's see how our settings from the first shot work out on this clip. So flipping back into our moon comp, let's select the effect, copy it, and paste it onto our penguin footage. Nice! That really cleans it up. In fact, as we toggle the effect back and forth, you really don't realize how many little fringes are in the shot until we get rid of them. Oh, that's way better. But fixing it presents us another problem. Pink, or magenta, isn't the only color that shows up when chromatic aberration is present. Green shows up as well. But no problem, we can get rid of that too. Let's just select our Change to Color effect, duplicate it, Command D, and choose a shade of green instead. So zooming into the image, let's pick a mid-green tone and confirm the selection to get us a nice color balance. Oh, much better. If we toggle the effects on and off, you can see we get some nice fringe removal without affecting our overall color balance or introducing any significant noise into the image. That's great. So let's take this final setting we created and apply it to one more clip. Here's a shot of my nephew, Luke, playing in the leaves earlier this fall. And again we can see some chromatic aberration on the edges of some of the leaves. We'll copy and paste the settings from before onto the footage and you can immediately see the problem. The fringes are gone, but so are his flesh tones. So we'll have to go and do one more set of changes to make this all work. Because our color palette in this shot is much brighter and contains a whole lot more chrominance, the values from our previous shot obviously aren't working that well. First, let's delete the second instance of the plugin so we can deal with the primary issue, eliminating the pink fringes. So let's turn on the correction matte, and then turn down the hue, raise the saturation, and crank the softness. There, that looks better. Again, the idea is that we customize the settings by our shot-by-shot needs. And now that we've got our fringes refined, we still have one more cleanup to do. Since the pink colors from the chromatic aberration and Luke's flesh tones are relatively close on the color wheel, we'll have to do a very small bit of roto work to protect the colors on his face. And don't worry, this doesn't have to be very exact at all. Simply duplicate the layer and delete the change to color effect on the copy. Draw an elliptical mask around his face. Press MM on the keyboard to reveal the mask properties. We'll feather the mask by 50 pixels and set a keyframe for the mask shape. Now all we have to do is a rough animation of the mask to bring back his flesh tones in his face. And out of respect for your time, I'll just speed this section up. If you have questions about how to do rotoscoping in After Effects, I'd encourage you to check out Pete O'Connell's Tutorials and Master Series DVD here on Creative Cow. He'll do a much more thorough job to answer your questions than I ever will. There. Perfect. So I hope you've enjoyed this quick but practical tutorial and found some ways you can save a few shots of your own. Although you wouldn't have to use this process on every shot, it's definitely a handy technique to be aware of when you need it. And now that I've shown you it's possible to bend the laws of physics, or at least mask out their effects, maybe you can help me designing those rocket boots I've always wanted. Oh, that would be sweet. So until next time, I'm Carl Larson for CreativeCow.net.